It might not feel like it on a day when it's 37 and there are snow flurries, but tornado and thunderstorm season is right around the corner. I'm Jeff Brown, the legal writer with the State Bar of Wisconsin, and I'm here today to discuss Tornado and Severe Weather Awareness Week with Charlie Shortino, Chief Meteorologist for WMTV Channel 15 here in Madison. Welcome, Charlie.
Well, thanks for having me.
You bet. So I won't blame you for today's weather. We do seem to be having an unusually cold spring though, eh? Or maybe not.
Well, it's okay. Everyone else already has, so you don't need to blame me.
So before we get into talking about Tornado and Severe Weather Awareness Week, I wanted to bring up something that a lot of people might not be aware of, and that is that you were college roommates with former State Bar President Jim Boal.
I was, as a matter of fact, I spoke at his inauguration to president of the State Bar, and introduced Judge Abramson. She was there as well. So yeah, I remember it very well. Jim's a good friend of mine.
Where did you guys go to college?
We went to college here at UW-Madison.
So what are some tips oh, go ahead.
It's kind of funny because my sister met Jim's sister separately from me, and I met Jim in a class. And my sister asked if I wanted to go out with her and her friend. And I said, well, I'm going out with this guy. And she's like, well, bring him along. And I brought him along, and the brother and sister, my sister and me and Jim and his sister went out. We didn't even know that each other knew the other person's sibling. So it was kind of funny.
That's funny. Those things happen. I went to here at Madison as well for undergrad, and those kind of things happen all the time. And it really is a great place to kind of form those lasting friendships.
Yeah.
What are some tips or things people should be keeping in mind as we get ready to go into tornado and severe weather later this summer once it finally does get warm?
Well, one thing to keep in mind for sure is the fact that it just seems, and I've been doing this for 30 years, it seems like we're getting more and more severe weather than we have in the past. It seems like the tornadoes are more numerous. We average about 20, 21 tornadoes a year in Wisconsin, but I have a feeling, as time goes on, that average is probably going to come up a little bit. And there are any number of reasons for that, but it also seems like we're getting into more and more violent weather, and it seems like we've kind of stepped that up a little bit intensity wise as well. More flooding, more severe thunderstorms taking place, stronger winds, that type of thing. So severe weather season runs basically from about now. I mean, we can certainly see severe weather now. We can see it any time of the year, but we tend to think of mid-April through about September as kind of the wheelhouse of our severe weather. And then, May, June, July are probably the biggest months for us.
Well, talking about it beginning now, I grew up here in Wisconsin. My parents are from Fond du Lac, where there historically seemingly to have been more tornadoes up there. And I can remember my mother telling me stories about tornadoes that happened when she was a girl up there. And I think a lot of people always think about tornadoes July, August. It's hot, it's humid, it's sticky. There's that sky turns that ominous color of green and not a leaf moves. But do we see them happen in conditions when it isn't like that? Do they ever happen when it's colder? Should people, is it a mistake to be going around on a day when it's 60 and not worrying about severe weather just because it's not warm? It's not that kind of day you think about when you see the movie Twister, for instance?
Yeah, well, it kind of depends on the day. You can certainly have tornadoes in 60-degree temperatures. Heat and humidity, I agree. That's one thing you think about when you think of severe thunderstorms, but really what fuels them is temperature differences, and vertical temperature differences can help fuel those. So even if you have 60 degrees at the surface, it kind of depends on what the temperature is aloft. And if you get big enough temperature differences, you create a lot of instability. And you can have you can have cold air funnels, we call them, when temperatures are considerably cooler, 60s, 50s. You can even have them in when temperatures are in the 40s. Now, are we going to get tornadoes in the winter? No, it just doesn't happen that way, because you have to have a thunderstorm to have a tornado. It's difficult to have a thunderstorm develop in the winter. Not completely out of the question. I know a lot of people have heard of thunder snow and have experienced thunder snow, and it certainly happens, but that's kind of a different type of thunderstorm that it would take to generate tornadic type weather. You have to have a supercell with a rotating updraft, and that's a little more difficult to get in the winter when it's cold.
I have seen lightning in the winter when it's been snowing out, and I want to ask you about that. And also, I went to law school in Oregon, the West Coast, and right after I moved out there, it was in August, and I was, I'd been there maybe 3 days, and I was watching the nightly news, and it was a local NBC affiliate in Portland, and back then they used to always close the newscast with some sort of feature video, something light or interesting. And they said, we're ending tonight's broadcast with rare footage of lightning in San Diego. And they showed some lightning over the bay in San Diego. And I sort of scratched my head and said, what's rare about lightning in August? And then after I lived there a couple of years, I realized they generally do not get thunderstorms out on the West Coast. Why? Can you talk about why that is, and why sometimes we see lightning when it's snowing here?
Well, the big joke in San Diego, is all the TV weather people only work one day a week. They just go in on Monday with 5 different suits, do the same forecast 5 times, and then go home and have the rest of the week off. Nice. San Diego's it's not conducive to severe thunderstorms that we've gotten accustomed to in the Midwest. It's just not set up for that. You need to have a low level stream of moisture, which you'd think, coming off the Pacific, you'd think they would have a low level stream of moisture, and they kind of do, but you also have to have cold air loft, and they don't really have that. And the moisture stream is coming off the Pacific, so it's generally cooler than like a Gulf type moisture stream that we will get in the Midwest that brings in much warmer and more moist air. You never have I shouldn't say never, but you just don't have that sticky humidity that you have in the Midwest along the West Coast. You just don't, because when you have the moisture stream, it's typically cooler air that's bringing that moisture stream in. So just geography makes it not conducive for severe thunderstorms along the West Coast.
And what about lightning during snow? Though I think that was outside St. Louis. I witnessed that when that happened.
Yeah, we can get that in Wisconsin. You can really get it anywhere. It's just convective snowfall, which means you have rapid lifting motion, and that creates the static electricity you need for the lightning. Now, even rarer would be a cloud to ground strike. A lot of times those strikes are taking place aloft within the cloud. You can get cloud to ground lightning strikes in the winter with thunder snow. And, it's very rare. It's definitely something to see. And typically if you have that, it is really snowing hard if you're getting that, because it's basically a thunderstorm that's producing snow. The air aloft is cold enough that the precipitation is developing the snow.
This wasn't cloud to ground, as you say. It was more like heat lightning. It was just up aloft in the
yeah. That's what you'll get most of the time in the winter. But again, it's not totally out of the question to have cloud to ground strikes in the winter either.
So, last question. You also, in addition to being a meteorologist for NBC 15, serve as an expert witness in law cases that have a weather component. Can you tell me maybe a little bit about how you got into that, and maybe cite an example or two of how weather played a role in a legal case that you were called to be an expert witness in?
Yeah, I got in. I've been doing it for about 20 years now. I've probably worked on, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 cases, so quite a few. I just looked in my files, and I have 14 that are open right now that haven't been closed. Some of them my work is done. I do a variety of different things. I've done both civil and criminal cases that are weather related or had a weather component to them. Car accidents, those, I mean, those are obvious. You know, you get a car accident and it's weather related. A lot of times they'll want a weather expert to kind of recreate what happened weather-wise. Slip and falls, I do quite a few of those as well, but there are more interesting ones. Weather studies for flooding. We're just starting to get into the time where a lot of the cases from the Middleton flood are starting to arise. And I've been working on a few cases about that as well. One of the more interesting ones, I'm just looking out the window and there's crazy snow taking place right now. One of the more interesting ones I did, it was actually a criminal case. And I believe it was probably 15 or more years ago. And it took place, I think in Racine is where it was. And it was a case dealing with drugs. And the police had a suspect that they believed was selling drugs, and they were chasing him, and they ended up on foot, and they ended up catching him and arresting him. And they did a search of the area, and they found packets. This was back when crack cocaine was one of the drugs that was being sold, and they found a package of crack cocaine near him, and it was wet. And they picked it up, and the case was centered around the fact that they believed that he was carrying it in his mouth, because that was something that was typically done there. They would carry it in their mouth under their tongue, and then when they were ready to sell it, they would sell it. Well, they found this, and I was actually working for the attorney on the defense side of it. And basically, to make a long story short, they wanted to know why that package would have been wet. Was there any rain? Was there anything that would have caused it to be wet other than saliva? Because the police did not do a DNA test on it, which they should have done. And if they would have done that, then you would have known it was saliva, but they didn't. So what I did was I studied the weather conditions, and the package, depending on how long it was sitting on the ground, and we didn't know how long it was sitting on the ground, but we kind of put the question of doubt into the mind of the jury. This was a jury trial, and that, similar to how if you lay a piece of carpeting on grass and come back an hour or two later and pick it up, it's going to be wet on the bottom. The ground transpires moisture, so that can, if there's something on top of it that does not allow that to evaporate, it can condense onto the object. So that was what they were asking me to do in trial, and I looked it over, and that's what was done. And you know, I make no judgments on guilt or innocence. I'm just an expert witness, and the guy got off. I don't know what happened to him after that, but he did get off. So that was one of the criminal ones I've done. Some of them are very, very sad. There was a case I did that was for DeWitt, Ross, and Stevens, Eric Farnsworth. Hi, Eric, if you're watching. He hired me, and there were a couple kids who got hurt very badly. Semi rear-ended their car, and the semi was speeding. So he left from, I believe, the Green Bay area, and this crash took place near Dodgeville. So it was about probably a 2.5 hour drive he took, and I went about 15-minute increments where he would have been and what the weather was like. And he was claiming that he just all of a sudden came across snow, and we proved that it began snowing just after he got through Fond du Lac, and it was snowing all the way through Madison and all the way to Dodgeville. And At times it was very intense. We looked at radar data and surface observations, and yeah, he ended up, or his company ended up paying a rather large civil judgment, but it was, it was very, very sad case. So that's the kind of thing that I do as far as expert witness goes. And there are, any number of different things. So.
Great. Well, thanks. Those are both fascinating stories, and a reminder that there are all sorts of components that go into cases, both criminal and civil that we don't always think about. Charlie, thanks for your time today, and look forward to seeing you down the road, hopefully in warmer weather.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Nice talking to you.